Let's begin with our warm-up. Standing with your feet together, split your heels apart and then your toes so that your feet, knee and hips are all in line with each other. Let's begin with our warm-up. We're coming into some half squats. So we're folding up the hips, keeping our back nice and straight and not putting too much pressure into our knees, not allowing them to fall forward in front of our feet.
Why you do that? You drop me like who that? And put me through that. But baby, it's useless. I'm living my life. Don't need you in my
From here, let's move into some heel raises. So the main thing with this is controlling your body as you come down. You don't want to plump your weight straight to the ground. You want a nice controlled movement as you move down. This one's a great one for ankle mobility.
Shawty, don't play that game. Know my place. Shawty, I know my. Got a lot to do. I got a lot to do. I got a lot to do. At the crack of dawn.
Now let's combine the two together. So we're coming into our half squat, heel raise, press up and then down. Squat, heel raise, press up, then come on down. This one really challenges your coordination as well as working on some core endurance as well. You're doing great with this one. Keep it up. Let's move into some spinal twists. So you're twisting your upper body one way and then onto the other. I want you to imagine you've got headlights at the front of your pelvis on your hip bones. You want to keep them dead straight, facing forward, while you just get the rotation through the upper part of your body. This is a great one for postural release. Let's move into some toy soldiers. So float one arm above your head while the other one moves down beside your body and alternate between the two. Again, the main aim here is to keep your ribs and your pelvis as controlled as possible, and you want the movement purely to come from your arms and your shoulders. You may find that there's a bit of restrictions here through your lats and your shoulders. Let's move into some open book. So extend one arm back behind you as you reach around to the front. Let's stick to that side for a bit. You want the rotation purely to come from your upper body. You want to keep your pelvis as straight as possible. Imagine those headlights are still facing forward. Let's switch to the other side now. So again, extend that arm back behind you as you reach around to the side and back to the front. Again, you want the rotation purely to come from your upper body. Let's move on to some open arms. So imagine there's a tree in front of you and you're wrapping your arms around it. Again, you don't want to sink into it from your breastbone, but rather just rotate purely through your shoulders. Let's meet at the end of our mat, ready for our roll down. Tuck your chin into your chest and peel one vertebra down at a time as you gently roll forward down towards the mat. And let's meet lying on our left-hand side. So you can pop a pillow underneath your head if you like, or you can extend your arm just to support your head and neck in a neutral position. Make sure your hips are stacked on top of each other and your feet are in line with your hips, ready for some clams. So with this, we want the rotation purely to come from the hip joint. We don't want our pelvis to rock forward or backwards, so you don't necessarily have to open your knee so far apart, as long as you maintain that neutral stability. Move your knees back in line with your spine, ready for some lift and lowers. So we're just opening up from the bottom knee and hovering. Hold and then release. That side glute muscle really should be starting to burn. Let's move on to some side kicks. Lift the top leg up, hover it, as you sweep your knee forward and then backwards. Again, the main aim with this exercise is not how far forward you sweep your knee, but rather how stable you keep your pelvis.
I never thought you would take over my mind, 'cause I've been lost, but I'm giving you all of my time. Isn't that good enough? Changing my patterns a lot. Yeah, I never.
Let's move into some upper body rotations. Slide the top hand far forward in front of the bottom hand as you rotate your upper body forward and then backwards. Again, let that top hand slide forwards in front of your bottom hand, using purely just your upper body to rotate and keeping that pelvis as still as possible. Let's move on to some arm openings, keeping your elbow straight. Extend and rotate back behind you as you bend your elbow to rotate forward. Again, with this movement, we want the movement to purely come from your upper body rotation as you keep that pelvis as steady and stable as possible. Really take the time to enjoy the stretch with this one, as it allows your chest to open as you rotate backwards. On this last one, rotate to meet on your back. Let's move on to some pelvic rotations. So imagine your pelvis is like a bucket of water and you're rocking it forwards and backwards. So tipping the pelvis forward and then backwards. This time I want you to come into side rotations. So you're tipping the pelvis from left to right, left to right. These movements mimic the action of walking and are very good as an assessment and treatment tool of the pelvis. Now that we've found a stable position for our bucket and there's no water tipping, let's move on to some hip twists. So gently float one knee out to the side, keeping your pelvis stable and that other knee steady. Again, it's not how far you can drop that knee out to the side, but rather how stable you can keep everything else. Stick with this side for a little bit before we move on to the other side. Again, this is working on our core endurance. Moving on to the left leg. Again, it's not how far you drop that knee, but how stable you keep everything else. Imagine you've got a cup of champagne sitting on your right knee. You don't want that to tip over as you extend your left knee out to the side. Remember, we're working on core endurance here and on pelvic stability as well. Let's move on to some leg reaches now. So bring your right leg up into tabletop, extend and reach that leg out, bring it back to tabletop, then drop it back down. Again, this time round, we're working on keeping that pelvis stable and not allowing it to tip from left to right. We're not here for much longer before we switch it up to the left leg. So tabletop, extend and reach, back to tabletop and down. This time, let's do a bit of core confusion and let's alternate between the legs. This really works on pelvic stability, preventing it from dropping down left and right. So alternate between your right leg and your left leg. Now let's meet on our stomachs. So turning over, lying face down, you can pop a pillow to rest underneath your forehead if you like. I want you to tuck your tailbone under so that your pubic bone presses into the ground. Your legs are about hip width apart. And then pop your arms down by your side. This time, draw your shoulder blades back towards each other as you lift your arms back behind you and relax. Draw those blades down and back and lift your arms up. This is another great postural workout. So it works the deep postural muscles through the upper back. This time round, I want you to pop your arms by your side. Draw your shoulders down and away from your ears as you lift your head and neck about an inch off the mat. Again, it's not how high you can lift your head and neck up off the mat, but rather how much you can control it without having to use your lower back and glutes to take over. This time round, draw your shoulders down and away, lift your head and neck up and float your arms up off the ground. Then relax everything slowly. So shoulders down and back, head and neck up and float your arms up. These are such good postural exercises for anyone that has a desk job or is sitting down all day. Okay, let's pop on up onto our hands and knees and come down into a child's pose. So let your feet meet, spread your knees as far wide as possible, and come down to really enjoy the stretch through the lower part of your back. Shuffle your hands to one side as you feel the sides of your lats stretch, and then move around to the other side as you feel the other side of your lower back stretch. Okay, let's come on up onto our hands and knees into a cat-cow stretch. But this time what I want you to do is just articulate your pelvis. So tuck your tailbone all the way under and then release it and tuck it all the way back. Tuck it under and then tuck the opposite way. This is a really good specific low back stretch and just work within a range that's comfortable for you. Let's do some hip stretches now. So maintaining that arch through the lower back, I want you to gently draw your tailbone down towards your heel. Maintain that neutral curve in your lower back, then press on up. Roll, tuck your tailbone in, and then articulate backwards. Gently roll your tailbone back towards your heel to really feel the stretch through the hips, and then come back up. So again with this, you're just working within a range that's comfortable for you. You don't want to overdo it or overstretch it, as it can actually do you more damage than good. Let's roll on over to our right hand side now. So again, you want your back to be in line with the back part of the mat. Stack your hips on top of each other, your feet in line with your hips, and extend your top arm out in front of you. We're going into some open clams. So keeping it long at the waist, you're lifting the top knee up away from your bottom knee, purely getting that rotation from your right glute. So with this, you want about a 45-degree hip flexion and a 90-degree knee flexion. Now move your knees back so that they're in line with your spine, but that you can still look down and see your knees. Lift your top leg up, hover, then lift it up away from the bottom knee for our lift and lowers. You should really feel this movement through that back pocket of your right glute. Again, make sure you're keeping your waist nice and long. We don't want to shorten the waist at all with this one. This time, hover your top leg up as you sweep your knee forward and then backwards. Again, it's not how far forward you move your leg, but rather how stable you keep your pelvis. So let's move on to some arm lengthenings. So reach that top arm in front of the bottom arm as you rotate your upper body forwards and then rotate backwards. Again, the aim with this one is to keep your pelvis as stable as possible while you get all your movement through the upper thoracic spine. Extend your arm long back behind you and then bring it forward. Keeping your elbow straight, extend the arm back behind you, bending your elbow and then reaching forward. Again, we want this movement all through that upper spine. So let's meet on our back, ready for some bridges. So this time I want you to bring your heels a little bit closer towards your bottom. Tuck your tailbone under as you lift your pelvis up off the ground. Hold and release back down, one vertebrae at a time. Tuck the tailbone under, lift up, hold and release back down. This time I want you to hold the bridge up as we work into some pelvic rocks. So we're bending to the left and then we're bending to the right. You really need to use your glute muscles to keep your pelvis upright with this one, but we're just bending left and right. This time round, I want you to drop your hip bone down to the mat. So we're dropping just the left hip bone down and then we're going to drop the right hip bone down. So imagine it's like a plate and the plate's being tipped from left to right and you're using your glute muscle to pop you back up to keep everything level. Avoid this one if there's any low back pain. It just means we need to work on your glute strength. Now let's work on some glute marches. So come back up onto our glute bridge as you release one leg up into tabletop and then back down. So we're marching that left leg up off the ground and down. The aim again with this is to keep your pelvis as straight as possible. Let's switch sides now, moving on to that right leg. So march it up and down as you keep your pelvis as stable as possible. A good indication is you might like to pop your hands onto your hip bones and just make sure there's no pelvic tilting with any of this. Pop your knees and feet together, arms outstretched by your side as you rock both knees out to one side and rotate your head the other way. Really enjoy this stretch through your lower back. And let's move on to the other side, nice and slow, feeling that stretch to the lower back. Let's move on to some mermaid stretches. So come on up and resting on your forearm as you reach and extend your arm above your head and then dropping down in front of you. Let's switch on up to the other side. So come down onto your forearm as you reach your arm up above your head, Really enjoy the stretch on the side of your back and your spine. And then come on down, reaching forward as you feel that stretch through the lower part of your back. Let's come on up for some hip stretches. So tuck that tailbone under as you extend one leg forward and then alternate with the other leg. This one is a lot harder than what it looks. This time, hold your right foot up as you tuck your tailbone under. Feel the stretch through that left hip flexor muscle. If you want an additional stretch, just raise your left arm up above your head and hold. Let's switch on up. Left leg up, tuck tailbone under, extend your right arm up above your head, and you should gently feel that stretch through the front of your pelvis. Let's roll on up. So feet together, extend your knees, tuck your tailbone under as you lift one vertebrae up at a time. The last thing to come up is your head and neck. Let's meet for some standing mermaid stretches. So again, reach one arm up and over as you bend to one side. Come on down and roll on back up. Extend one arm up and over, roll down as you come on up. Clasping your hands together as you stretch forward through the upper part of your back, come up and gently rock from side to side if that feels good.